Ruthless Compassion is a podcast that shows you how to become fiercely kind. I'm the host, Dr. Marcia Sirota, and in each episode, I get into it with experts and regular folks about the things that get in the way of what we want. Things like addiction and mental health, isolation and loneliness, difficult family and work relationships, and the importance of self-care. I want to help you overcome the obstacles to living your best life, and I want to inspire you to become a powerful kindness warrior. Angela Hanscom is a pediatric occupational therapist and the founder of TimberNook, an internationally recognized program in the United States and New Zealand. She is also the author of Balanced Barefoot, How Unrestricted Outdoor Play Makes for Strong, Confident, and Capable Children. Angela has been featured on the Children and Nature Network, Huffington Post, MindShift, Babbel.com, NPR's education blog, the DIY Network, the Jerusalem Post, Times of India, Johnson TEDx Talks, and is a frequent contributor to the Washington Post answer sheet. Welcome to the podcast, Angela Hanscom. Welcome, Angela Hanscom, to the Ruthless Compassion podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's really a pleasure. I just wanted, for the benefit of the listeners, you to sort of introduce yourself and tell us kind of who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I'm a pediatric occupational therapist. I'm the author of Balanced Barefoot, which talks about the importance of unrestricted outdoor play. And I'm the founder of TimberNook, which is an outdoor program where kids experience grand-scale sensory play experiences outdoors. And we're now in 5 countries. And Canada is launching this summer.
Wow. Tell me a little bit more about this TimberNook program.
Sure. So we started this program, I started running programming back in 2009, really as an experiment in my backyard, just observing that children weren't spending as much time playing outdoors. And so the program really grew in popularity, and a couple of years down the road, our programs were filling very quickly. I have my own family. I have 3 children. And so it wasn't my plan to run summer camps. It was really just something I felt like my kids could benefit from. But it grew quickly, and what was happening is we would launch the program and have signups in February for summer, and we had a wait list for all 4 weeks within a minute one year. And I had parents calling, a couple in tears, saying, my kids got into your program last year and didn't get in. What are you going to do about this? And then I had a couple therapists call and ask, can we replicate your program? This is very unique for our profession. And so that's when we decided to license a program, and we recognized that we had something very unique that the world could benefit from. And so in 2013, we started training other individuals and organizations that were interested in bringing this program to their parts of the world. So it's really, it's all about play experiences outside that are sensory and meaningful and child-directed, that really enhance child development and get kids thinking on their own again. Because what we're seeing is there's a decrease in kids that actually know how to play outside on their own. And so we're kind of the bridge to that world of getting them back to free play again and playing independently outside.
It's a wonderful idea. Now, what do you mean by sensory and meaningful?
Sure. Play experiences?
Yeah.
So it's really, let me give you a couple examples. So for instance, we might read a story or do a puppet show on the 3 Little Pigs. And so they'll hear that fairy tale, and then they'll actually build a house out of bales of hay in the woods, sticks and bricks, and then reenact the story after building the homes. And then so they're getting this pre-literacy skill, but then they're also building the forts of their own design. So there's no adult, telling them how to build the houses, but they're reenacting and living and breathing these stories. And then that's followed by free play for at least an hour, sometimes up to a couple hours. Every 3 hours of programming, there's at least an hour and a half of free play. Because we learned over the years, and the more we observed, that that's where children got really creative. However, most kids are having trouble just jumping right into free play. They have little practice with playing outdoors, which is really scary, actually. And so the experiences give them different ideas and props and inspiration. And each experience is totally different. So it helps with inspiration and leads them to creative ideas and opportunities.
This sounds so wonderful and so amazing, but I want to kind of rewind a little bit to why you decided to do this kind of thing. Because obviously, like, there's an implicit problem that you're trying to solve, right? And so you must have discovered this problem with children and had some idea of how to make a solution, right?
Right. Well, it's been quite the journey. It really started back when my own daughter, I have 3 children, like I said, 2 daughters, 9 and 12, and then a 2-year-old son. But back when my oldest was about 4 years old, she was about to go to kindergarten. And she really, I had a couple of friends come up to me and say, we need to prepare our children for kindergarten. I remember thinking, what do you mean? And one of them said, well, we need to have them practice sitting. And I kept thinking, well, you can't teach that. It's not a skill. It's just something So I'm like, this is very interesting, because I remember kindergarten as very play-based. And so the fact that we had to enrich and prepare our children for play didn't quite make sense. So the first day came about, and I remember the kindergarten teacher meeting with us and saying, this is not kindergarten like you remember growing up. She said, this is really like the new first grade. And she said, we won't have time to teach your kids how to cut with scissors. We don't have time. We're not going to have time to teach them how to tie their shoes. So if they can't tie their shoes, please put elastic laces on them or Velcro. And then she said they'll have a 5-minute snack. And if that gets in the way of curriculum, we'll do a working snack. And then they have 15 minutes of recess in kindergarten. She said if it starts snowing, they're going to start doing indoor recess because they don't have time to change our children. And I remember as a pediatric occupational therapist, we often work on making sure children have the developmental skills they need to be successful in school and with play. And just knowing that wasn't right, that the curriculum took precedence over child's basic needs and developmental needs. So, but all those things did come true, and I ended up pulling her out of school to homeschool for a couple of years, and I really learned a lot about different educational philosophies, such as Reggio Emilia, where the environment is the third teacher, and Finland, where the kids were in the river dissecting fish to learn about fish. And it was very hands-on learning experiences. And so this program that we created, we also started because we realized that children needed to be outdoors. And I drive through a neighborhood to get to our property. We live on 12 acres of land. And I remember thinking, where are all the children? Why aren't they outside? Because I grew up, all hours of the day we were outside until the lights went off type thing. And so that was also something I was paying attention to. We started doing this program, and it was funny. In the very beginning, we were all about providing exciting activities and entertaining the kids. And then over the years and just watching them in the woods, we learned that the key was really to use the environment to inspire them and give them opportunities to think differently. But actually, the adults really step back and allow the children to be empowered and take play to a whole different level.
It's amazing. Now, this might be a difficult question for you to answer, but I was just wondering, can you see the difference between a child who has never had the opportunity to do free play and a child who has been involved in free play?
Oh, yes. Absolutely. We are seeing more and more children that come that are fine with the experiences because there's a little bit of a prop there For instance, they might do a giant bubble experience or foam experience where they're washing clothes and taking care of babies. But once it gets to free play, they struggle. And so that's been really interesting, and it really has a lot to do with how much practice and opportunity they have. We've learned over the years that if we are standing too close to kids while they're creating forts or they're creating their own worlds out there in nature, they actually start seeking reassurance from us and see us as the idea givers. And so they'll come over and be like, so is this okay? Is it what's next on the schedule? Start tattling. But what we've learned is if we actually step back and reduce adult presence, then they start turning to each other to solve issues and problems.
That's really nice. I guess what I was really looking for is kind of basic sort of ways of coping that kids have if they've had more time to be independent and to play on their own, as opposed to kids who spend a lot of time sitting or have adult-directed activities. Have you noticed a difference between these two groups of kids?
So if kids had more, say that again?
Yeah. So if the kid has had more opportunity to do this free creative play connected to nature, right, then, what kind of a kid will they be? Will they be perhaps more independent, more self-assured, more confident than the kid who has not done the free play, who's done a lot of sitting in the class and adult-directed activities, or been driven to, their adult-directed sports or lessons?
Right. Yeah, I think it definitely, if you go back to that situation, that children that don't have a lot of practice will seek more reassurance for everything. And so they're going to be the ones that have a million questions for homework or in school and asking the teacher, I don't understand the essay question. Can you please lay it out for me? The kids that have a lot of free play have the opportunity to think for themselves independently. They tend to be much more creative, more independent. They're quicker to start to be your leaders. We see them as being the leaders in play. They'll create the forts first and do higher levels of play. They'll also be much more capable physically and be able to regulate emotions easier. Everything comes more naturally. Whereas if children don't have a lot of free play, there tends to be a little bit more insecurities and seeking reassurance, constant reassurance, and this need to be entertained or this entitlement as well. We're noticing where they're used to adults entertaining them. I did have a child one time come up to me and ask, what are we doing right now? And I said, it's free play. And she said, are you kidding me? She goes, my mom is paying you good money to entertain me. And I remember thinking, how old are you? And she was 6 years old, but, just the mentality of the adult's role is to entertain me is really fascinating and a different mindset.
It's actually quite frightening, isn't it?
Yes.
So when you have these kids and they come to your program, what do you see at the end of the program? What kind of kids graduate from your programs?
Sure. So that same child actually was really a great example of the potential of, just having practice and just the opportunity to have play with other children. Because in the beginning of the week, she really struggled. Anytime there's free play, she would either find a seat around the fire circle and just do nothing. And all these kids kept coming up to her, inviting her to play. And then halfway through the week, she started going with them. And then by the end of the week, she was initiating creative play with other children. And that was really eye-opening because it was only in a course of 1 week of intense outdoor play experiences that she was independent with creating, her own play schemes. And so it goes to show that, children really just need the opportunity to play more and the opportunity to get bored. And we do believe the environment plays a huge role. And it's nice to have that neighborhood type play where you have mixed ages. We tend to think that, all 5-year-olds should play with 5-year-olds and, 7-year-olds with 7. But in, reality, when you were growing up, if you went to play in the neighborhood and you're 5 years old, you would play with, a 7-year-old, a 4-year-old, a mixture of ages. And the older kids will often look out for the younger children, learn nurturing, and the little kids will often inspire that, imaginative play again for the older kids.
Yes, and I've heard that when a group of kids of mixed ages play together, it teaches the older kids compassion, and it teaches the younger kids skills that they wouldn't necessarily have learned on their own, and it creates like these really strong bonds where these young people then can get along with other people after they have this experience.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So how are the community members responding to these programs? You say they're super, super popular, and you're spreading them out. Like, what do you see for this program in the future with this kind of response?
Right. So yeah, they are. I think parents are definitely looking for this sort of program. And we're also working with little children too. So we're now doing programs where the parents can come and observe and actually learn how to inspire outdoor play again. Because we've had a whole generation now that's been separated from outdoor play, and giving them the tools on how to inspire their kids to play again. And they keep those programs fill really quick. So I do see this as being very timely. There is so much fear out there about letting kids play outside that having a program like this where there are adults, but they're more hidden, allows you to overcome that stranger danger mentality. That there is adults out there, but their kids can play like years pass and create societies in their own worlds in the woods. But the door is actually opening now for us to go into public schools. So we're piloting a couple programs where we're bringing TimberNook into the schools. And I believe that's the best way to create change and to bring back outdoor play, especially preschool age, because even preschool it has become more and more academic. And so when the door opened to work with preschools, we jumped on it because it's our chance to show the teachers how important play is for development, especially outdoor play.
And what kind of factors of development do you think outdoor play is connecting to? Like what aspects of of our development does play address?
A lot. It's funny because it works on everything from organization of the senses and organizing the brain, which lays the foundation for learning, all the way to higher level problem solving skills. It works on everything. Let me give you some examples. One is, you hear a lot about kids going to kindergarten and their hand grip isn't quite where it should be, their hand strength. And so they're having a hard time holding pencils correctly now. And so they're getting a lot of referrals for occupational therapy. Well, digging in the dirt and holding, let's say holding a shovel and digging at the same time helps to develop this gross grasp, gives you the resistance you need to have strong hands so you can be able to do more fine motor work and hold utensils properly. The same with climbing trees. You're getting resistance to the palm and developing those hands. Crawling in the dirt helps develop the arches in the hand as well. And plus, crawling outdoors versus indoors is going to really challenge all of your musculature more than inside, where you're always going to hit on the same point of contact of your hands. And I see outdoor play as cross-training. So, for instance, climbing a tree, every time you hang from a limb, it's going to stimulate different muscles. And even your skin, it's going to push on your hand on different parts and develop all the muscles in the hand. You hear a lot about kids getting overuse injuries where they're doing one sport over and over and they're getting injured because they have really strong musculature on one aspect of their body, but there's other parts that are weak. Whereas outdoor play, every time you're playing outdoors, you're moving and working different muscles. So there's a lot about sensory integration that happens best outdoors as well. So being able to know where your body is in space really requires us to move in all different directions, like rolling down the hill and spinning in circles is actually something we use as occupational therapists for treatment for children to know where their body is in space. And if we are restricted over and over and kept in a chair, the fluid in their ear cannot move back and forth, and that fluid can thicken, and our vestibular system can weaken. We actually need to move in all different directions for hours a day in order to maintain this vestibular sense, which is actually key to all the other senses. So if that sense isn't working right, it can't help to organize the other senses. And so we're seeing a huge rise in kids with sensory issues, and they're having trouble regulating their emotions, having trouble paying attention, falling out of their seats in school, all of this because they're not getting enough movement. So it is really key when you're outdoors, you have an opportunity to move freely and you have a bigger space. That space is really key for this kind of thing.
It's so funny because it sounds so simple. You just go outside and play like a regular kid. What do you think has happened that our society has kind of shut all that down? Why is such a wonderful thing now not the norm?
Right. Well, I think a lot of it had to do with actually liability issues and fear of kids getting hurt, ironically. Like one example is a child in the early 80s fell from a playground structure in America and got a brain injury. And it actually had to do with the playground structure. There was a gap in there. It had nothing to do with the slide being too long or the swings being too big. And but what happened is they created guidelines for playgrounds. And this is a perfect example of what we do as a society is we just took it to heart. We took those guidelines. They weren't supposed to be mandatory, but everyone took it to heart. So when old playground equipment that had the long stainless steel slides, got rusty, they replaced it with equipment closer to the ground. And it's just not challenging to the children's senses and muscles like it should be. But a lot of it has to do with fear of kids getting hurt. The ironic thing is occupational therapists will actually, in our clinics, we have these swings that hang from ceilings, and we literally will put them in the swings and place them in different directions and move them. And we actually have them take, I guess, what we would call risks, where we would want them to, let's say, go on a swing. We'd want them to stand on the swing and go on their belly on the swing or spin on them to know where their body is in space and to be more strong and capable. But if you go to schools, what's happening is they're taking away all of that. They're saying they're not allowed to go on their bellies. They can't spin anymore because they're going to get hurt. And so we're working against each other. The healthcare world and the educational world are at opposition right now. And so the educational world is trying to keep them safe. But the ironic thing is the kids are becoming more and more unsafe because they're not developing the skills necessary to become safe and capable.
Yes, and I've seen the same thing in terms of the emotional consequences of kids being overprotected and bubble wrapped, where they become, where they lack confidence, they become more fearful, more anxious, less able to make their own decisions, less able to get along with each other. And then when they get into grade school, high school, university, they fall apart.
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned something about how when kids are around adults in this free play, they tattle more. That was a very interesting point I wanted to kind of come back to, because it really speaks to how when kids are left to their own devices, they figure out how to get along with each other. But as soon as the adult is present, they're doing this kind of tattling. Could you comment on that?
Sure. So I have a great example of a situation too where children did work it out, and but they do kind of, they will come up to us. Their first instinct, and I think it's because they do this so often, is to come up and tattle. And what we do is we often place it back to them and we'll say, well, what can you do about the situation? And place it back in their hands. And we call it step back but tune in. So we actually will hide in the woods but we tune in. So we do have to pay close attention because play can change quickly and we're there for safety. However, we do kind of blend into the woods so that kids are empowered to seek out help from other children on their own. A great example of this is one time we were in the woods and we were actually training new people, and a fight broke out in the woods. And this little boy went up to these girls and said, "You need to let me play." And the little girls formed a chain and held hands and said, "No, no, no, we don't." And right away, our adult instinct is to, we want play to be happy and we want to fix it so there's a positive outcome. And so a few of us wanted to do something about it, but something in my gut told me, let's just wait and see what happens. Plus he had scissors, and so that puts everyone on edge. So they had decorations around their teepee, and he ended up cutting the decoration and reached in and took their fake gems that they had hidden in their teepee and he ran off running in the woods with their gems. And so the girls chased him around the woods until he got tired. And then he found a seat. He gave it back to them and said, "Fine, just take them." And he found a seat by a tree, and he was sulking. And the girls went back and recreated their teepee. And one of the little girls went over and actually sat down beside him. And we're like, this is very interesting. We couldn't hear what was happening, but we could hear the tone of voice. And she started talking to him, and immediately he got offended. His voice rose again, and he said, blah, 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 blah. And he was yelling at her. And she put her hand up as if to say, like, whoa, and stop. And he got quiet, and then he started yelling again. And she put her hand up to motion stop again. And then his voice came down, and they ended up having a conversation. And at the very end, the little girl invites him to play. And that little boy was authentically accepted into the group for the rest of the week. And I often, when I speak to audiences, I talk about, now what would have happened if we had gone in and we had fixed the issue right away? What opportunities would they have missed out on? And we often hear, the little girl practiced empathy, which is something that you have to experience. They figured out the solution on their own. They, resolved it, and they also authentically accepted him. So if we had said, you have to let him play, this could have been there could have been resentment on both parties, and it could have been an ongoing issue that required adult intervention over and over throughout the week. But because they solved it on their own, there wasn't that need for adult intervention.
That's a fantastic example, and I think it speaks to so much of where we as adults go wrong in dealing with children. We don't give them enough credit for being intelligent, insightful, sensitive, empathetic, and able to really solve a lot more of their own problems than we think that they can.
Right.
Well, this is just wonderful, and I really hope that you get this program in just everywhere, because I think it's desperately needed. And the way you describe the kinds of things that these young people are able to do, it's incredibly inspiring, and it gives me hope that the difficulties that children are experiencing because they're so bubble wrapped and overprotected, maybe you can start making a dent and moving back in the right direction.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Well, if people want to find you and find more information about your wonderful program, where can they look online? So
they can go to TimberNook.com.
Can you spell that for us?
Sure. Timber, like a falling tree, and then Nook, NOOK.com. And then we also have a Facebook page where we often put developmental things and try to make the link between the healthcare world and the educational world for people so they can start to understand why this is so important.
Well, that's fantastic. And if you had a call to action for our listeners today, what would that be?
The call to action would be to just step back next time, watching children play, and just really start to look at the different things that are happening, just appreciating it for the moment, that they're, digging in the dirt and they're strengthening the muscles, but they're also, coming up with their own play ideas, but just starting to value that time and giving them that time and space, I guess, would be really key. We're often in a rush and we want to keep kids busy, and I think that they just need more opportunities to play outdoors.
Well, so for parents who are listening, please take this to heart. Please take Angela's call to action to heart. I think it's more important than you can even imagine.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Angela, for coming on the podcast today. It was really a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.
That was the inspiring Angela Hanscom, and I'm Dr. Marcia Sirota. If you liked this podcast, please subscribe and review it on iTunes. And please sign up for my free monthly wellness newsletter at marciasirotamd.com.